The prayer that Greg led a moment ago made me think, talking about when we go out these doors, that's a mission field. Several years ago, and my understanding that it's true, there was a young preacher who had a young family. Son was about 4 years old. He was teaching that child many scripture. And he remembered there was somebody at their home, and they were doing a Bible study. And he remembered his dad saying something about outside these doors. When the people left, a little boy asked his dad, he said, "Dad, what is it that's outside these doors?" The father said, "Son, it's a mission field." The little boy didn't say another word. He went back to his room. A few minutes he came back and had a little Bible in his hand and had a little satchel and everything. And he said, "Well, let's go, Dad." And his dad said, "Where are we?" Asked him, "Where are we going?" He said, "Out these doors. We're going out into that mission field." Can you imagine what it'd be like also if everybody had the mind of a 4-year-old that says, "Let's go. Let's go, Dad." You know what I hope and pray is? I hope and pray that it's a true story. And I hope and pray that as that little boy grew up, he became a man. And I pray that he took his Bible and his satchel to a world that's lost and dying in sin. Every time I hear that, I think of that about that little boy. Solomon says, "Make no friendship with an angry man." Think about this for a moment. "And with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul." When you think about friends, it's a wonderful thought. Friends or friendship is very special. I remember well from 1 Corinthians 15:33, Paul said, "Evil communications corrupt good morals." And someone might be thinking now, why would you use that verse? The same reason I would use verse 24 and 25 in Proverbs 22. If you have a friend or friends, you have a gold mine. And I will tell you that friends are forever if the Lord's the Lord of them. They will stick with you. They will stay with you. They will help you. They will support you. They will correct you. They will humble you. They will love you. And you have nothing to fear from a friend. They will not use you. They will not abuse you. They will not lie to you. They will not mistreat you. A friend is something special. And as I said in the outline, a lifetime is not too long to live as a friend. When I think about friends, there's many things that I think about. But some of us can, when you think about it, we can name some really important friends in our lifetime. I can. As I sat there this evening also, I thought about my friends. I've thought about those that are no longer here. They're dead, that is, they're gone from this life. But they were true friends. My prayer has always been that I pray to God that I was as much as a friend to them as they were me. I will tell you from a biblical standpoint and from a realistic standpoint, when you make a friend and you have a friend, they are friends for life. And this is important. Some of us will look forward to making new friends. I always do. When I travel overseas, I have people that ask me, "Are you afraid to speak to people?" Of course not. And when I go through the different airports, I will be very honest with you. I'm going to always speak to the person to my right or the person to my left. I'm going to do that. And that's very important to me. And I know it's very important to the person that maybe be afraid to even speak to me. I'm not going to tell you that when I leave them, for those few minutes that maybe I sat with them, that we're friends. But I can say this, they'll always be able to say, he sure was a friendly individual. He was friendly. Coming back from Amsterdam this few weeks ago, little lady sat by me, and I mean, she was a very neat individual. I had an aisle seat because I wanted the aisle seat simply because I wanted to be able to stand up those 11 and a half hours from time to time. But she asked, would I take the window seat so that she could have the aisle seat, because she said, I have to go to the restroom a lot. And I thought that would be okay, because when she goes to the restroom, I'll stand up and stretch my legs. She never went one time for those 11 and a half hours. But we talked for 11 and a half hours. She was the talkingest little lady. She was originally from South Africa. Her husband died. Evidently, they were very wealthy. And now she lives in, I think she said, Ireland. She has a son that lives in America. And so we were sitting, we were talking, and I coughed just a little bit because that dry air on the plane usually gets me. And she said, I have some candies, friend. Or she said, my friend. Would you like to have one? I said, sure. Thank you very much. And I opened that thing up and I put it in my mouth, and I just gagged because the candy was ginger. I didn't know much about ginger, but one thing I do know now about ginger, it's hot. And she said, it'll be good for you. And so the stewardess came by and she said, give my friend a cup of hot water. And I'm thinking, why would I want hot water? She said, drink it, it's good for you. And so as we talked, every time she'd open her mouth, she'd say, friend. When we made it to Detroit, she said, I have a friend, a new friend. And I believed that. And she said, I wish you well in everything that you do. I told her about the TV program. I told her about watching us on YouTube. And her son says that he watches GBN. And she said, I would like to know more about GBN. I said, just go to the internet and you'll... But my point is this. You know, Solomon said, if you want to have a friend, you have to show yourself to be friendly. When that little lady left, she said, I must have a hug. And she said, I'll remember you the rest of my life, friend. But you know, the thing that bothers me just a tad is I don't think I ever called her a friend. But nevertheless, we're always looking forward to making new friends. And that is important. I want you to also understand that friends are irreplaceable because they are that important. I think about Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times. Now, I believe we need to pay real close attention to these scriptures. What did Solomon say? He did not say that a friend loves most of the time or some of the times. Solomon said a friend loves at all times. When the times are good, when the times are bad, when we're on our highs, when we're on our lows, when it's easy, when it's difficult. You see, a friend loves at all times. And a brother is born for adversity. Life is not always easy, is it? But I can tell you one thing. If you have a friend to help you through this life, you are a highly blessed individual. Extremely blessed. And Solomon is allowing us to know this. But the kind of friends we have are also very, very important. We go back to Proverbs 22 and verse 24. Make no friendship or friends with an angry man. You don't want to do that. If the person changes, of course, you would appreciate that. And you would try your best to see that everything is okay. In Proverbs 12 and verse 26, Solomon says this, The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. Now you would say that's just the opposite of a friend. Friends never plot to hurt you. They never plan to hurt you. They never try to figure out a way to make you feel bad, or on and on and on. But I will tell you, the righteous are the only ones that you want to have as your friend. Solomon is basically saying this. You go to Proverbs 19, look at these verses. Wealth makes many friends. Now this is what you'd call fair weather friends. But the poor is separated from his neighbor. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaks lies shall not escape. Many will entreat the favor of a prince, or the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. All the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He purchases or pursues them with words, yet they are wanting to him. What a tremendous set of scriptures. Some people are what we would call fair weather friends. If you have something that they might get from you, they will be your friend. If they think they can use you in some way, they will be your friend, and I use that in quotations. But in reality, they aren't your friends. A friend is one who has been tested by fire. I don't care what you go through. I don't care what you do. I don't care what it is. They're going to be there for you. That's what a friend does. And so I want to answer the question in part 2, what constitutes friendship? Well, first, we truly need to be friends. Now, it's often that you hear people say, hello, friend, and they may not even know you. But that person in return is a friendly individual. He or she or they are showing you their friendship, or they're extending to you their friendship. For many years, growing up out in West Texas, whenever you would drive and meet someone, they'd always wave at you, and their hand would always come up. They didn't have to know you. They didn't care to know you in one sense, but they were showing you their friendship or friendliness. And so being friendly is very important. Again, we think about scriptures that are very important to us. And in Proverbs 18:24, a man that hath friends must do what? As I mentioned a moment ago, he must show himself friendly. It was mentioned a few moments ago in a conversation about smiling and putting on a smile for people. But the individual asked, have you ever seen a person who smiled but their eyes would tell you just the opposite? Absolutely. You can tell a person when they're really, really wanting to smile by the expression on their face. Their eyes are so telling, it's unbelievable. I have seen people who would force a smile on their face, and it strained so hard you'd think their face would crack. It wasn't a friendly, it wasn't a real warm and a welcoming smile. And so Solomon is exactly right. If we want to have a friend, we must show ourselves friendly. And he says, there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Proverbs 18:24. Tremendous words from Solomon. Friendship. How do you really sum it up? How do you really talk about what constitutes a friend or friendship? I am not really giving this justice this evening because it would take a long, long time. It's always the case where warmness attracts people. They're just attracted to you. You can take some of the worst people on earth, and when you show them a smile, a friendly smile and warmness, they're going to be attracted to you. One of the most evil men in America, or at least at one time he was, maybe he's changed, he'll be in prison the rest of his life where he needs to be, is Charles Manson. Charles Manson wrote in his autobiography, the one thing that changed him, if anything changed him, was when a person showed themselves some warmthness. My own parents, my mother and my father, never showed me warmness. Well, the Bible is very clear that this is what attracts people. Because people want friends. Coldness and or what I call grouchiness, it's like an insect repellent. It repels them. When I approach someone, if they don't smile, or if they seem cold or somewhat distant, it doesn't take me long to back off. Because I can't change them, but I want them to know I approach them in a different way. I approach anybody and everybody with the intentions of being warm to them. I don't care who they are, total stranger or not, because I know that attracts people. It attracts me. When I go to the grocery store or go to an apartment store or a department store, I should say, and when I go through the checkout counter and the checkout people are cold, I normally will avoid them the next time I go in there. I really do, even though I've tried to show myself to be friends or friendly, because that's how powerful it is. But also, what constitutes a friend is someone who is helpful. I don't mean that we stand with our hand out all the time. That's not what I'm speaking of at all. But you see, a true friend is always alert and paying attention to you. And they're going to always check on you and make sure you're okay. They're going to do that. And they're helpful in any way that they can be. I think about the friend in Luke chapter 10. We know what we're talking about there, and I won't read the scriptures. Out of 3 men, 2 that you would expect to help this poor man that was beaten, they didn't do it. But that one who was least expected, that Samaritan, he not only helped the man, but he went beyond helping him. And so a friend is someone who is helpful. And we know that it was this good man they called a Samaritan. Throughout years, people will say, we should be a good Samaritan. And I agree with that. I think we should all be good Samaritans, even though we're not Samaritans. But we know what we mean when we say that. And so, yes, a friend is always helpful. They will give you the shirt off of their back. They're always going to see if there's something they can do for you. In the time of need, you will truly and you will quickly find out who your true friends are. Because a true friend never walks away from you. They never back away from you. They never avoid you. And yet when times are rough, they're right beside you. They're there to do whatever they can do. And that's a great feeling. And as I said in your outline, fair weather friends are not true friends. No. Reminds me of in the book of James. I think the chapter is 2. I haven't looked at it in a good long while, but I'm almost certain it's in chapter 2, where James talks about an individual who says to a person who is in destitute, he'd say to that person, I'll tell you what you do. You go on your way, and he said, what I will do, I will be praying for you. Now that's a fair weather friend, because as soon as you disappear out of eyesight, that individual is no longer going to be thinking about you. A person who will pray for you will help you. That's a fact. And James dealt with that, because then he talked about how that faith without works is dead. And the works that James is talking about would be the works of a friend, works of compassion. And so, yes, a friend is very helpful. And so in order to be a friend for someone or to someone, you have to be humble. You think about humble for a minute. Just the word humble itself. Isn't it wonderful to be around people who are humble, who are meek and gentle, kind and caring, compassionate, patient? You see, that's the way a humble person is, Poe. If you really want to be a true friend, be humble. Because if you're humble, you're going to be kind. You're going to be patient. You're going to be compassionate. You're going to be understanding. You're going to extend a hand to that person or persons, and that's the key to it. And so do not think that you are better than anyone else. Those who think they're better than anyone else, and I want you to think about this for just a short moment. I don't care if it's in the church. I don't care if it's out of the church. And let's be honest, brethren, there's some in the church who think they're actually better than others. First of all, they're not really a true Christian. But whenever we get to thinking that we're better than someone else, we could never, ever, ever be a friend to anyone. I couldn't even be a friend to my wife or to my son or to my daughter-in-law if I wasn't humble or if I didn't have this kind of a spirit. And if I really thought that I was better than them, then that would never work. For an example, and a cross-reference I use is Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3. Paul said to the church at Philippi, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. Vainglory. That's interesting. Someone who really puts themselves up on a pedestal or thinks they're better than someone else, that's all vainglory. It's all useless. But he said, here's what they'll do. But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. I'm telling you, this works. When I'm talking to someone, and I mean this from a humble heart, I try to lower myself just a little bit. I don't want them to think that I think I'm any better than they are in any shape or form. I want them to realize that I am with them, I'm hearing them, and I want to hear them. Because that makes them realize that he will be helpful. He's humble enough to even though I'm hurting, he's here for me. And that's the way it needs to be. When you think about Jesus, I'm telling you, Jesus, he was found with the rich, he was found with the poor, he was found with the educated, he was found with the uneducated, he was found with the healthy, he was found with the sick, he was found with the righteous, and he was found with the unrighteous. As a matter of fact, his own people criticized him of being with the unrighteous or the sinners, and he said, those that are well do not need a physician, but those that are sick. A friend. A friend is something very, very special, and yet we all seek after it. A friend, if you really want to be a friend, be unselfish. All of these, everyone that I'm talking about, are nothing less than Christian traits. Be unselfish. Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28, even as the Son of God came, listen to him, to be ministered unto, to be ministered unto, but he did not come to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus didn't come for people to serve him. That wasn't his purpose for coming. Whenever we do a work, I don't care if it's here at Nettleton, I don't care where it is in this world, wherever we go, whatever we do, we don't go to be ministered unto. The only time I want someone to minister unto me, and I mean this not in necessarily a biblical sense, but if I'm in the hospital, then I want them to take care of me. I want them to minister to me. Not from the biblical standpoint, but in the sense of ministering. Jesus did not come to be ministered unto, but he came to do the ministering. And so the point is that we need to be unselfish. There wasn't a selfish bone in the body of Jesus. We all know that from studying the life of Christ. And if we're going to pattern ourselves after Jesus, we will be unselfish. We'll be like Paul when he said, I will very gladly spend and be spent. A friend is someone that you can call any time of the day or night for any reason. And they won't say to you, well, call Joe May, or call Terry Benson, or call James Lee, or call Dorothy Combs. They don't do that. They will say to you, I'll be there as soon as I can get there. And they're going to take care of you. But that takes an unselfish individual. That's a friend. Also, a friend is someone who will help you carry your burden, a burden carrier or a barrier. One thing the Army taught me the years that I was in the military is to be willing, ready, and able to help your fellow soldier. If he falls, you reach down and you pick him up. If you have to, you put him on your shoulder. If you have to, you turn him on his back. You grab that backpack to the best of your ability and you drag him off the field. You do not leave him there. You take him with you. No matter what, if it costs you your life, you do it. That means then that you are a burden barrier. In Colossians chapter 3 and verse 13, forbearing one another, Paul says, and forgiving one another, if any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. I'm telling you, think about this, a burden barrier. When Paul was writing to the church at Colossae, he told the church at in Galatia that we are to bear one another's burdens. It's very important. And so this is what constitutes a friend or friendship. A friend will always be helpful. A friend will always be humble. A friend is always unselfish and always ready to bear a burden or burdens with you. And also, a friend will be sincere and they'll be honest. To me, that's sort of the meat of the sandwich. Sincerity and honesty. In other words, we do not want to appear to be something that we're not. We have to be trustworthy. In Romans 13:13, let us walk honestly, Paul says, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering or wantonness, not in strife, nor in envying. When you stop and think about it, a friend is truly a pearl, a priceless pearl. If you have one friend, you're rich. You're so rich. If you have two friends, you're just richer and richer. A friend, what an amazing thought. But a friend will have to be a helpful one, a humble one, unselfish, ready to bear a burden with you, always sincere, and always honest. Wow, that is so important. So I ask you as I get ready to close this lesson out, have you ever really considered what a true friend is? And I'm not trying to play with your mind or challenge your sincerity about anything or your intellect. But how often do we think about a friend or friendship? I believe anyone who is able to be a friend is one who loves Jesus. You know, in John's account, it's obvious that we all need a friend. I do. I need a bunch of friends. I've heard people say this, I don't need a friend. You're wrong. You're wrong. I don't need anybody. You're wrong. You need friends. You need people. And you need to understand one thing. Without that, you're going to become a very bitter person. A very, very bitter person. So we need to be a friend as much as we need friendship. There are those out there that need your friendship more than you realize. When we look in this audience right now and we see each other, we should be the best of friends. Not only are we brothers and sisters in Christ, but we should be very close friends, very caring. And also, we need most of all the friendship of Jesus. Now, a lot of people will say, Jesus is my friend. And he truly is indeed a friend. And we truly do need his friendship. But we need to understand John 15, 13, and 14 because Jesus lets us know something here that's very important. In John 15 and 13, Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." It's a very serious thought. A very clear statement that Jesus made. I wonder for those who say, Jesus is my friend. Jesus said, if you're my friend, then you'll lay down your life for me. You will give your life for me. You will be my minister. Jesus doesn't need to be ministered to. But Jesus tells us to go out into the whole world and preach the gospel to every creature. Jesus tells us that, as in Matthew 28, Jesus tells us that we're to treat people the way we want to be treated, Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12. He taught many things about friendship. And yes, there's no greater love than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. But one thing we need to understand is that very next verse. Jesus says, "Ye are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you." That verse will stop us in our tracks on Judgment Day. We can talk about friendship. We might even know what friendship is all about. But until we are a true friend, it begins with God, because we're to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. You know, I heard a person the other day as I was going to the mall and I was picking something up for Margie. And I was standing by this person. And this person had their cell phone out, and again, here I go. But I'm telling you something. Some people cannot live or breathe without those silly cell phones. I mean, they can't drive, they can't walk, they can't talk, they can't sleep without those things. And this lady was in front, and she had her cell phone out, and she was doing all this kind of number. And the woman was wanting to check her out, and she said, wait a minute. And she kept on, and she was doing all this texting, whatever they do. And the lady looked at her, and she said, would you be a friend to these other people and step to the side? She said, absolutely not. It's amazing how we don't think when we need to be thinking. It's amazing sometimes how we act when we should be acting in the right way. The lady said this, the young lady, she said, you know what, and she went ahead and finally checked out with 3 or 4 people behind her, and she said, I resent what you said. I resent what you said to me, talking to this cashier. And the cashier said, well, ma'am, it was very disrespectful that you would stand there and take up these people's time and mine. And she said, the only thing I have in this life is my cell phone. That's my lifeline. And I really like what the lady said, and probably she'll get fired if someone finds out about it. She said, no, ma'am. She said, your lifeline is Jesus, and you just don't know it. Now, I am your friend. That was pretty amazing to me. That young lady left in a huff. But I'm hoping she will think about that. I'm hoping. A friend of mine called me from Dallas the other day, just actually north of Dallas. And he said, Jimmy, he said, I don't know what to think anymore. I don't even know how to act anymore. People are just so into this thing. And he was talking about the cell phone thing. I can't even preach a sermon without people playing on their cell phones. And he said, I told a person the other day, he said, friend, there we go. Friend, don't do that. Don't do that while I'm preaching. It was very distracting. And the man said to him, the person said, you're not my friend. Been a member of the church for several years, but he was offended because he just mentioned something that hit a nerve, you see? But let me tell you something about a friend. They're going to help us. They're going to tell us when we're wrong. They're going to tell us when we're right. They're not trying to hurt us. They're trying to get us to see what we're doing. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Jesus said that, and he said, you are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. Yes, he's a friend. But on the human side, if you have a friend, a true friend, you have a priceless gold mine. Because a friend will never leave you. They'll never leave you. They will tell you when they think you're wrong. They may be wrong. They may have the wrong concept of something. But at least they're a friend enough to say something to you. They will always turn to you and help you and guide you in any way they can. They're not going to try to offend you. They're not going to try to hurt you. That's what friends are for. It's really amazing. Friendship and friends. We could go on for hours. One of the greatest subjects that I think that we could talk about. Oh, the man that called me, he said the next day, the individual called him and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I was so offended by what you said. He said, I apologize to you. Would you forgive me? Oh, I was offended. I was furious because you said something about that. But he said, I've gotten so wrapped up in it, I didn't really realize it. And the man said, I know. It was obvious. So please understand that a friend goes further than what we realize sometimes. They will help us in any way they can. You have a great time when you have a friend, because you have a peace that the world doesn't even understand. When someone's a friend to you, they are a friend indeed. And I'm talking about from the biblical standpoint, not from worldly standpoint or standards. Always be friendly. Always. Don't be offended when someone says something to you that you might not like. It might be proving their friendship. It might be that. If not, it could turn into a friendship. It's just amazing what we can do with this. This evening, if you're not a Christian, you have someone who died for you, and you know that. He gave his life for you, and that was Jesus. And Jesus is the one who we read there in John 14:15. You are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. Here's what Jesus commands for us to be a Christian. Jesus commands in John 5:24 that we are to hear his words. He commands in John 8:24 that we're to believe on him or we'll perish. He commands also in Luke 13:3 that we're to repent or we're to perish. Now don't get mad at Jesus. Don't be upset with him. He loves you. He's telling you what you need to do. But not only does he say that you're to repent of your sins, he says in Matthew 10:32 that you're to confess my name. If you'll confess me before men, he said, I'll confess you before my Father which is in heaven. In Mark 16:16, Jesus said, through commandment, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not be condemned or lost. Now, brethren, that's a friend who will help you and direct you in the right way. For us as Christians, there should be no better friendship than we'd have right here. Don't be offended when someone tries to tell you something. If you're wrong, don't be offended. Be thankful. Thank God, first of all, and thank that person. A friend will be there. They're going to try to help you along. They want you, because they love you and care for you, to be on the right path. That's a friend. And we just go on and on and on. But sometimes because of our own high-mindedness, and sometimes our own haughty spirit, and sometimes because we're just not thinking clearly, we will become offended. And that's dangerous. Thank God for a friend or friends.